Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast is here on a Friday, and you can get the Inside the Birds podcast on all podcasting platforms. And don't forget to check out their YouTube channel and all their YouTube content. Just search Inside the Birds. It is a happy hour Friday. It's football at 4. What are the biggest questions now as we head into 1 week from today, Adam Caplan? 1 week from today, the Eagles will kick it off in Brazil. What's happening?
That's true, man. It's crazy. You know, we're still trying to find people who are going. We put sort of the bat signal out. No one's told us they're going yet, and I don't know. Across the country, maybe some fans will, but. One thing, though, Mike, I do want to bring up, because being a big Phillies guy as I am, I would say this with, you put the question out on a show. I was listening, and I saw your social, about who do we blame for Taijuan Walker? Well, let's not forget, Mike, Taijuan Walker, where the Phillies got him, how good he was for the Mets. I think people forgot about that. I mean, it's been a while, but he was really good. I was so pumped when the Phillies got him. I don't think you could have predicted this one. Some stuff on Dave Dombrowski you could blame, absolutely. I don't think it's fair here because you can't predict a guy in the tank like he has.
No, I don't think the signing was – I think the signing was a smart one, but it hasn't worked out. But people are blaming Thompson for continuing to use him. And I said he doesn't have a choice. If he's on the roster, they got to keep using him until Dombrowski makes a decision to pull the plug on him, which is not happening. Thompson has to keep trotting him out there every fifth day. He really has no other option.
Right, and that's in Major League Baseball. And by the way, it does happen in the NFL with general managers who have personnel control. If they want to, it's not advisable, but these GMs will do it. They'll overrule a coach. Hey, we want this to play this week. It does happen, Mike. Not to the degree it happens in baseball, because baseball analytical data takes over. The general manager has full personal control, like Dombrowski. And as you know, Mike, it's not in Major League Baseball. Lineups are done with the consent of the general manager. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of fans just have a hard time accepting that, and that's why the manager gets a lot of the brunt of and coaches in all sports. The fans just love blasting the coach because I always say, Adam, fans believe that there's a part of them that could coach. They know they can't play. So because they think they could coach, they criticize the coach, as opposed to who really deserves most of the blame in all sports, the players.
Right, and look, in the end, the manager in baseball, as you know, has really less of an impact than maybe an NFL head coach would. But in the end, it's the player's business, and the players have to perform, and that's just the way it is. You know, it's funny, for all the negativity with the Phillies, they're still 24 games over 500, second best record in the MLB. They're never going to keep up that pace that they did early in the season, and I don't want to compare it to the Eagles, but the Eagles were 10-1 at one point, and we all probably thought they weren't as good as their record. In fact, we know we kept saying it on Football at 4 every week as we transition to the Eagles. And as we transition really to the season, Mike, as you mentioned, 1 week away, there are a lot of questions, Mike. In fact, some of these questions, I would tell you, I was not thinking about this before the season started, but I've kind of changed my mind on a couple issues.
All right, let's take a look at what Adam Caplan's top questions are for the 2024 season now that the roster seems almost complete. They have a couple days to make some changes before they leave for Brazil. But yesterday they put Bradbury on the injured reserve. He's going to be out almost half the season, it would seem, 6 to 8 weeks. You've got Orton Burks up, so there's some moves there. So these are the top questions now with the 53 and the practice squad. The relationship that Jalen Hurts and Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni, that little triangle, how will that involvement all be this season?
Mike, this is a major situation in terms of continuity. Hurts did talk about, he had said 8 different play callers in 10 years. That's an unbelievable stat. He put it out there in one of the season press conferences, and I was blown away by it. I counted 6. He would know better than I would. He said 8. Now going back to his dad in high school, that's crazy. Now, look, I'm not defending the way he played last season, but that does creep into the thinking. That's why it's a question. How is the relationship going to be between he and Moore? The communication's got to be good, Mike. It's not just communication. It's related to the relationship and the communication together. If Hurts doesn't like something, he's got to let Moore know what's not working for him. Jalen in OTA struggled mightily with the timing of the offense, got the balls deflected. In training camp, he was certainly much better. You definitely saw some improvement. I don't know that he's quite there yet, Mike, to be honest with you. I think it's been a little bit overrated how Hurts did. He did a solid job, but it's not. I think we're going a little bit too overboard. I felt 22, Mike. His offseason in 22 was off the charts. So very similar to what Wentz did in 2017. So we turn the page to the season between those two guys. And then Nick Sirianni, Mike, I'm going to throw this out there. And that's not something we're going to know right now. There's no way because we're not there yet. And we know that it's not Sirianni's offense. He'll have little input because it's really you can't have too many people in Jalen Hurts' ear. We know that. This is kind of what doomed Carson Wentz. Hurts a little bit when Marty Morningweg, most people don't know this, Marty was working with Jalen in 2020 and others, and Rich Scangarello and the Steer and all these other guys. Can't have that. So I'm very interested to see what does Sirianni do now that he's a full-time CEO head coach. Does he try to interfere, micromanage? Look, we don't know Sirianni in this position before, Mike. He's never been in anything like this as head coach, so that's something we need to keep an eye on.
What about Hurts? Do we look at a rebound season from him? Is this, 2022, he was the runner-up for the MVP. He was the best player on the field in the Super Bowl. Last year, it just didn't look or feel differently. Although, Adam, there was a time of the year late in the season, probably week 11 or so, he was still the favorite or at least the second guy in the MVP odds. So does he rebound to the guy that was closer to the 2022 guy?
Yeah, I would not agree with that. I know some people felt that way. I don't know what people are watching. Hurts was widely inconsistent. People who work for us said the same thing. That it was not very good. It was very uneven through the first half. He certainly had his moments, but Mike, in the end, he's got to be more consistent. What it is, Mike, you don't need to throw for 400 a game. Just be consistent. I know he was spectacular in 22. It was just crazy how aggressive as a thrower he was in 22. We saw this, Mike. The reason why I thought he'd be a breakout player, just to go back what I was talking about on your show probably, certainly on our show, Inside the Burst with Mosher, we were giving our predictions and why I thought they'd be 14-3. Number one was Hurts. Because you see it. Your eyes don't lie to you usually. When somebody looks really, really good, and I remember seeing Mark Trestman, who's now with the Chargers, the former Bears head coach, and Mark, I ran into him at one of the camp stops, and Mark was like, wow. He had not seen Hurts up close before, and he was kind of blown away, and everyone was, and that carried over. I'm not saying he's going to get back to that level, but with A.J. Brown and Smith, Dotson as the three, we'll talk about him later, and Goddard, and Barkley now, Mike, how are you going to defend the offense? The sky's the limit. Well, it's a little strong, but I'm expecting Hurts. You asked to rebound. He's absolutely going to rebound this season.
Adam Caplan, Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast. All right, let's go to some other stories on this side of the ball, which is Kelsey out, Juergens in, Mekhi Becton never played right guard. He's in. So the new center guard tandem Mike Lombardi said the other day that he thinks the Eagles' offensive line a little overrated.
Well, I would have concerns, Mike. Juergens has not played center. He hasn't played full-time center since his final 2 years at Nebraska, which were the first 2 years he ever played center in his life. Remember, he came to Nebraska as a tight end, and he got moved to center. So this is going to be a challenge. People are going to need to be patient. It's not going to happen overnight for Cam. Cam's really athletic and really smart, but that doesn't mean you're good. Let's put Kelsey on an island, right? Let's talk about him playing well. It's going to take him a while to play consistently high football. I doubt it's going to be great every week. And by the way, we'll talk more about this next week when we break down the Packers matchup. The Packers have completely changed their defensive scheme for the first time in like 20 years. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. And with Becton, of course, Mike, I mean, this is a major gamble. I'm just, what's crazy? Both of the right guards were tackles in college. Think about that, Mike.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely this is going to be interesting to see a 6'8" man in the interior of the line playing guard.
Yeah, and one thing, tallest NFL offensive line, 4 players at 6'6" or higher. I mean, I know there'll be a shotgun and Hurts will be in under center a little bit, but this is going to be fascinating. They're going to have to move Hurts around and make sure he can see over the line? We'll have to see.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's go to a move that happened about 2 weeks ago. It was a big question mark. Has Dotson as the number 3 given them from a question mark to now solidified that position of wide receiver?
Boy, Mike, this had to happen. They had to do something at third receiver. The Eagles were telling you that they didn't think they were at number 3. Why? Because they gave up a third-round pick. They had 2 of them, and they gave up one of them for a backup receiver. Now, I say that the number 3 receiver in the Eagles offense with Kellen Moore is more important than most teams based on the way that he schemes things up with 11 personnel. I know there's a lot of knocks on Dotson, and I know people question, rightfully so, why would the world let a team in their division give to help a team in their division, right? Yep. But bottom line is this guy's talented. He needed, as I'm told by someone who knows what's going on there, he needed a fresh air. He needed someone who believed in him. The former coaching staff, I'm told, was very down on him. And now he goes somewhere where he's absolutely wanted, Mike. They really do need him to perform. Covey's not ready to be a 3. He's a change-up as a slot receiver. Johnny Wilson's coming back from his concussion. He's not ready to be a number 3, Mike. Eagles are telling you that because they traded for Dotson. So that gives you the answers to the test. Dotson's explosive. He's fast. He's not physical. He needs to compete at a higher level. There's some balls he should have gotten last year were thrown to him. He just didn't get it, and that's part of the knock I'm told on him. But he'll back up. By the way, he'll be the main back for Devontae Smith. I don't know right now who's going to back up A.J. Brown. That to me is a work in progress.
Adam, let's go to defense. Those are some of your top questions on offense this year. Defense, I was trying to think, do I have a question on the offense that you didn't hit on? I don't know. Maybe they have enough depth at tight end. Is Goddard going to be
next week?
Goddard going to?
Yeah.
Is Goddard going to be a bigger?
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, is Goddard going to be a bigger part of the offense? Somebody brought up an interesting, like everyone's like, oh, this is the year Goddard has a big year, and he always is on pace, and then he gets hurt. But is he like going to be a bigger part of the Kellen Moore offense than he was in the Sirianni offense?
Well, there's kind of a misnomer about. I'm not saying that. Look, the tight ends under Moore have done well. There's no question. The numbers bear that out. But last year, what happened was, and the reason why Gerald Everett and other tight ends with the Chargers got the ball so much, they ran out of receivers. Keenan Allen missed significant time. Josh Palmer got hurt. Josh Palmer got hurt. It was one of my favorite young receivers in the league. They just ran out of it. Quentin Johnson wasn't ready, so the tight ends had to get the football. Someone had to get the football. They played more 11-person, 12-person than they probably wanted to. So, Mike, when you look at it, tight ends will. But the thing is, man, Hurt has got to throw the ball in the middle of the field. I don't know what he's kind of risk-averse. You saw that last year. It was really bad. Goddard was open, Mike. He wasn't getting the football. That was the thing that no one talked about, which we found out for the season. Jalen he didn't see the field clearly. That's a coaching term. And that's on Jalen. That's not on coach. We could blame all we want on Brian Johnson was fired and everybody else who was involved last year. The quarterback's coach is no longer there. But the bottom line is, Mike, Jalen's got to make the throws that are there.
All right, let's go to defense. These are Adam's biggest questions entering the season on the defensive side of the ball. No Fletcher Cox. What are now what does the defensive tackle position look like without a mainstay who had been there for over a decade? Yeah,
and look, defensive tackle, the upside of Carter, who was phenomenal, was really, honestly, not only could have been a Pro Bowler, like voted in, but you're talking about an all-pro potential, had not tailed off late in the season. So he's so gifted. Now, what I found fascinating is their coaches talk about his condition, not just Davis's. So we're going to keep an eye on that starting in Brazil next Friday. And Jordan Davis, look, I think my mom knows this. Jordan Davis had problems with conditioning last season. This is not acceptable. He had very quietly had a good camp, I'm told. But we're not going to know. I've kind of learned my lesson with Jordan Davis. Don't make any assumptions with him that he's where he needs to be. Let's get to the season first before we declare him of having a breakout season or not having a breakout season. Let the season play out. Look, let's go to their defensive tackle group, where there's some good stories. Thomas Booker, great story, former sixth-round pick for the Texans. Clearly earned a job as a two-positional player. He'll play a little bit of nose. He'll play what's called a five technique in this scheme. Moro Joe, who will be their top backup tackle off the bench, has been a nice story. But Mike, let's understand something. These guys are coming in off the bench in training camp to face mostly the twos. Didn't have a lot of work against the ones. That's great that they've earned a roster spot. They will now, when they come in, face starting offensive linemen. These guys have not been a factor at all. Booker's never been a factor, and Jomo really didn't play as a rookie. So let's just see. I'm happy with these guys and how they developed. Then, of course, Byron Young, who was cut off waivers by the Eagles yesterday, who fell out of favor with the Raiders. So we'll see if he even makes it for a couple weeks or dresses at all. We'll see what happens. But overall, Mike, the defensive tackle group, and Milt Williams, of course, is such a great story. I'm more worried about the backup group. I mean, it's nice that they get to look at these kids, and we're going to learn a lot. But we got to see what happens over the next couple of weeks, and that'll ultimately determine whether they sign a veteran or not to be a backup.
What have we learned about this edge rushers group entering the season now?
Oh, boy, Mike, way more of a question than I thought it would be. I'm a little bit disappointed with what I saw in training camp. I thought this would not be a question. It definitely is a question. It's not about how many guys they have. It's about it's performance-based. Bryce Huff was not there in training camp. I think based on what I was told, he might be thinking a little bit much because the front that they play with the Jets is a wide nine, Mike, just to give people context. They run a little wide nine, I'm told, here in nickel, but he's got a drop here. It's completely different than what he was doing with the Jets. So, and he's never been a full-time player before, Mike. And then you got Josh Sweat, who started his own thing last year, and he just was for whatever reason, Mike, he decided that he was going to go for sacks, and he took a big pay cut. We don't know we don't know, although he's healthy. He had a good training camp, Mike. We'll see if it can carry over. Nolan Smith did well against the twos in training camp, not well against the ones. Have no idea what to expect. BG looked very good in his minimal playing time. His pass rush win rate, I was told, is pretty good. Jalen Sun is the wild card. There might be some weeks he doesn't dress, Mike, but I'm just going to put this out there on your show, Mike. If Nolan Smith, Patrick Johnson will mainly play on special teams. He had a good training camp. If Nolan Smith doesn't play well, if by like week 6 or 7, don't be stunned if Jalen Hunt starts playing over. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but Jalen Hunt showed enough, Mike, that there's something really intriguing about this guy.
Wow. All right. Keep our ears and eyes on that one here on Football at 4. Everybody, their biggest question, I think everybody I'm over here at Jester's in Rio Grande. I got a full bar here, and everybody's staring and saying, what about the linebackers?
It's so funny, Mike. You'll like this story. So every week, I play a lot of tennis, and I'm get my shoulder massaged and worked on. And the guy who massages me, he's a big Eagles guy, and the first thing he asked me, he goes, all right, my annual question. I go, let me guess, linebacker. The first thing he brought up. What about our linebackers? I go, dude, here's the thing. They got a lot of them. I don't know if any of them are any good. Devin White, who had the most snaps of any of them in training camp, I have no idea what to expect. Zach Bond has never played inside linebacker in his life until he signed with the Eagles, Mike. This is what I said at the top. I didn't know when training camp started that the questions will be this big on inside backer. Trot Jr. certainly flashed. He got off to a slow start, but really flashed. Burks got added off their practice squad. Van Sumerman had a nice camp, Mike. They have 6 inside backers. You only play 2, Mike. I'm waiting for Dean to take Bond's job. It's stunned it hasn't happened yet. You and I talked about this last week. I still have major questions with this group, Mike. They're not going to go away until they show me, bottom line.
By the way, the Eagles have brought in a defensive back, J.T. Woods, to the practice squad. So there's another defensive back in the room. So they're putting another defensive back, former third-round pick. They signed a third-round pick defensive tackle yesterday. So it looks like they're trying to hit on some of these failed projects elsewhere, and that'll lead us into the cornerback group because they just keep adding. But they got a group with Mitchell, Can he make an impact? DeJean, can he make an impact? That room was the biggest intrigue as we entered camp. Where does it sit as we enter the season?
Looks pretty good, Mike. And it's not, as we always say, it's about quality, not quantity. The Eagles have both. I think Slay looked good. He had a good training camp. You know, he wasn't right last season with that bad knee. At 33 and a half years old, Mike, he looks like he's back. Now, is he elite like he used to be? Maybe not. He still can play. Rodgers and Mitchell will rotate at that right cornerback position. Mitchell probably will be the base corner, boundary corner, and then when they go to nickel, Mitchell right now might be moving inside. The question now is, Mike, will they play Mitchell as much nickel as they were before? Because DeJean is back, who you mentioned. Maddox is on the roster. This is something we really don't know, Mike, because DeJean came back late, and Mitchell's got to be an outside corner. That's why they drafted him. And look, Mike, by the way, we're gonna talk about this next week. The Packers have the deepest receiver corps in the National Football League. Eagles have a very deep cornerback group. This is going to be great. I can't wait for him. By the way, Ringo, didn't mention him, who had a good camp. He will be their fourth corner, most likely outside corner. That's not the problem, Mike. Safety, look, top-heavy at safety. They have some depth. Maddox is at safety right now. They could play him in nickel. McCollum's their fourth, so let's see what happens, Mike. They're actually in pretty good shape, knock on wood, if nobody gets hurt and they perform like they did in training camp.
Yep, and so much so that, James Bradbury's on the injury reserve. I know he was going to play corner, but there was another guy who I guess could have played. He was the starter last year, in other words, and they just basically moved him out and replaced, and now he's not even in the mix at that position. That's how they have changed that position from one year to the next. So there you go, a little overview of all of the questions leading into tomorrow. Next Fridays, and when we talk to Adam, we will be getting ready for the Eagles and the Packers next Friday right here on Football at 4. All right, Adam Caplan, 1 week to go.
And, Mike, by the way, Tuesday's their first injury. So you and I will be talking about their first injury report of the week on Tuesday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week for the injury reports.
All right, there you go. And that'll get us ready for the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles season with the Inside the Birds guys here on Football at 4. Adam Caplan, everybody, here on another edition of Football at 4 on the Sports Bash.